Okay, let's get started because of the holiday. We have quite a bit of material to get through today, so I think we'll just do one explanation break, and I'm going to go a little quickly over Piaget. So you might want to chat in the book about some more details about Piaget. Usually this is 2 lectures, and I'm kind of compressing it into one. Any other questions or issues or anything from anyone? Okay, and I want to flag the fact that this is one of the places where what I'm going to say is going to be different in some ways from what the book says. So since I get to be the teacher, it's like mommy, what I say actually goes. So make sure that you flag that difference with the book. It's not a major difference, but it's about how we kind of carve out the territory. Okay, so let's start with theories of cognitive development. And actually, the central problem of cognitive development is one that goes back to the very, very beginnings of philosophy, the very beginnings of anybody thinking about the mind. And it's an argument and a problem that goes back as far as Plato and Aristotle. That's Socrates on one side and Aristotle on the other. Well, here's the problem. The problem is that we seem to have these very abstract, general, structured representations, knowledge, pictures of the world around us. So it looks like we know about people and places and things and relationships and all this kind of important knowledge that we have about the world. And that knowledge we have about the world actually lets us make brand new predictions about the world. It lets us go out and change the world. It lets us think new things about the world. So it seems like that's really central to our knowledge of the world as adults. But here's the puzzle. The puzzle is that all that actually reaches us from the world are a bunch of disturbances of air at our ears and photons hitting the back of our retinas. So that's all that actually gets to us from the world. So the question is, how could we ever get to knowledge or pictures or representations of people and objects, not to mention quarks and leptons and distant planets, from just a bunch of vibrations of air and patterns of photons hitting our retina? And that's a really deep ancient philosophical problem. And that's the basic problem of cognitive development. Because when we're looking at children, we can say, well, all right, a good way to answer that question is to see, well, how do we do it? What actually happens? How do we go from being babies who are born not having instructed about anything to adults who have all the knowledge that we have? What could happen to us between our birth and, say, when we're 25 that would let us understand as much as we do about the world? That's the really deep, basic problem. Okay. And historically, there have been 2 kinds of approaches to trying to solve that problem. Again, going all the way back to the beginning, to Plato and Aristotle. So one solution, the negative solution, is to say it just looks as if we somehow learn that abstract knowledge from the very concrete evidence of our senses. It just looks that way. Really what happens is that abstract knowledge is there to begin with. So it's there all along, and the concrete experiences that we have just fill in the details or trigger the knowledge, make the knowledge come to the fore, or remind us of the knowledge. It's not that we actually construct that knowledge from our experiences. And for Plato, quite literally, he thought that that justified the argument that we had past lives. So he thought that the way that this worked was that we had past lives, we were reincarnated, as it were, from our previous existence, and things that we had learned in this past life were what gave us the knowledge that we had, and then the experiences that we had just reminded us of the things that we already knew. Now, in fact, it's also worth pointing out that Plato, in the course of this argument, or Socrates in the course of this argument, does the very first recorded experiment in cognitive development. So, as opposed to modern philosophers who would be willing to just sit there in their armchairs and argue about this, what Socrates actually does is he gets a little boy who's pouring the wine at the symposium where we're talking about this. It's a little creepy from our perspective. This is a slave boy sitting and pouring the wine, not something that we typically have in our psychology symposia nowadays. Well, we have graduate assistants, so I guess that's kind of equivalent, but they don't usually do too much wine pouring. So he brings in this boy who hasn't been educated, just a child, and he asks him a whole bunch of questions about mathematics, in particular questions about Euclid's geometry. And what he does is he goes through all the stages of the proof of one of Euclid's proofs, and he sees if this little boy can follow through all the stages of the proof, and then at the very end up saying, yeah, that's right, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the 2 adjacent sides, one of those kind of things. And Socrates says, look, all that I had to do was just to access that, get that child to remember those relationships, and he could end up understanding this really difficult mathematical or geometric concept. And that means that it must not have been anything that he had to experience that let him understand that knowledge was really there underneath all along. And an interesting side note about this that I think is really cool is that Euclid was actually doing that work at the time that Socrates was writing. So the work of doing Euclidean geometry was going on in the same academy where Plato was hanging out. So from Socrates' point of view, it wasn't just that you could show that he had a geometric proof. It was that you could take the most cutting-edge research, the stuff that the very smartest scientists at the cutting edge of all of intellectual life in Athens were doing, which was Euclidean geometry, and you could show that the babies knew even that. So it was as if we'd shown that a 6-month-old understood string theory. It was even more impressive than it would be now. And I want to emphasize that because aside from the fact that it's a good story, in a way, what we've been doing in cognitive development ever since is doing what Socrates said. It's saying, okay, here's this idea we have about where our knowledge comes from. Let's go and ask a child and see what does this child know, what doesn't this child know, and use that as a way of trying to solve these big problems about where knowledge comes from. Okay, so that was the negative solution. Aristotle's solution, the empiricist solution, was sort of just the opposite. So what Aristotle said, and what empiricists have said ever since, is it just looks like there's this abstract, complicated structure to our knowledge. So it looks as if we know about chairs and tables and people and relationships and quarks and all the rest of it. But if you really look more closely, what you'll see is that all that knowledge just comes down to associations between particular experiences we have. So if I say I see a chair, what I really mean is that I've had a whole lot of experiences of things that have kind of 4 legs and have people sitting on them and are reddish. And when I say a chair, all I mean is it's a kind of little summary of all those very, very, very specific cherry experiences that I've had over the whole course of my life. So the argument is that the representations that we have, even though they look as if they're abstract and hierarchical and structured, really are just combinations of the specific experiences we have. So it's really just those patterns of photons and disturbances at your ears, but when you have many, 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 many such patterns, you can pull out something that looks like a more abstract hierarchical structure. And Aristotle also, like Plato, had a specific story about how that happened. He didn't think it had to do with past lives, but it was equally wrong, although insightful for his time. He thought that actually physically some of the forms and knowledge that we have about the world came from the objects in the world and literally moved from the objects in the world into our eyes and then into our minds. So he thought that things like a triangleness was actually out there in the world, and when you looked at something with a triangle, literally the triangleness moved from the object through your eyes and into your mind. So both Plato and Aristotle had what seem now like really weird ideas about how this could work, but their idea about what the structure of the theory was like was actually very much like the structure of theories that people have about cognitive development to this day. Okay, the sort of next, that was 2,000 years, and philosophers talk a lot about how many angels could be on the head of a pin and important things like that, but they stopped talking about children. The next person really to take children seriously philosophically was the great founder of cognitive development, Jean Piaget. And we're kind of know it's a little odd now because, as you'll see, the textbook still goes over Piaget in some detail, and we still teach people about Piaget, in spite of the fact that just about everything that Piaget said has turned out to be wrong. So almost everything that Piaget said turns out not actually to be right, or at least not right in detail. Nevertheless, much of the work that we've done since Piaget has been stimulated by, or in response to, or a reaction to, or comes from Piaget. So Piaget is kind of the great intellectual background to work in cognitive development. And what Piaget wanted to do was to try to articulate a picture of cognitive development that was neither this nativist picture where it's all there to begin with, nor this empiricist picture where you're just picking it up from associations between things in the world. And Piaget called this view constructivism. So the idea was that somehow babies and children were actually constructing pictures of the world from their experience, but they weren't just putting those experiences together, and they didn't just have the pictures of the world in the first place. And I think Piaget was right about that. He had something really profound and important to say about that. The trouble was he didn't really have the tools to say, once he said that that children were constructing knowledge, he didn't have much more to say after that about how that could be, what the mechanisms could be that allowed you to construct this abstract knowledge from specific details. And he had a bunch of words, assimilation and accommodation and equilibration, that kind of got at some of the intuitive pieces of this. So assimilation was the idea that when you understand something about the world, and now you have new evidence, you interpret that evidence in terms of what you already know. And accommodation was the opposite, that when you understand something about the world and you get new evidence, you change what you think in the light of what you already know. But aside from that kind of intuitive metaphor, he didn't really have a good way of hashing out what exactly those ideas were supposed to be. So there's two really important things about Piaget. One of them is that he had this grand theory about what was going on with children and what children were like. And the other thing was that he was this, they, as you'll see in a minute, had these really stunning observations of what babies and children did. And his he wrote 3 books about his own children, about their infancy, and then he wrote a whole bunch of books about preschoolers and school-age children. And in each one of those books, there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of surprising observations of what babies and children do. And you can take any random baby off the street and look at them, and you'll see the same things that Piaget did. And remember, this is in the 1930s. This is before there's any video. It's just sitting there with a paper and pencil and watching what babies are doing in a really careful way. And somehow he zoomed in on the things that are most important and most surprising, and that you can replicate with any baby in the world to this day. Which is an incredible accomplishment. And when we start talking about children's cognitive development, we're going to talk about some of those things like object permanence and conservation, really striking aspects of what babies and children do and say. Now, the reason why I say they for a minute is when I was first reading Piaget back in the 70s, my friend Andy Malthoff and I would go punting in Oxford and read Piaget at the same time. It was an idyllic way of spending your graduate life. And one of the things that always struck us was it almost sounds like there's two people when you're reading Piaget. There's this very abstract, philosophical, somewhat obscure German theorist, and that he was Swiss actually. And then there's this person who's describing what these kids are doing in this incredibly vivid, detailed, concrete, accurate way. It doesn't sound at all like it's the same person. And the observations are actually in little boxes in the book. So there'll be some of this very abstruse theory, and then there'll be one of these observations in a little box. And it turns out that the reason why it sounds like there were two people is that there actually were two people. So it was Piaget's wife who actually did all of the observations. Another thing we used to think is, how did he manage to do this? He was an academic and he was running a lab, and how did he spend all this time with these kids recording what they were doing? Well, it turns out he didn't. It was actually his wife, who was also a trained psychologist, who did the careful observations. So you should really think of it as being the Piaget's work rather than just Piaget's work. And of course, she didn't ever get any of the credit or the lines. Now, it turns out that for the work that he did later with the school-age children, a woman named Barbel Inhelder did get the credit on those books, and she was the one who did the observational work for the older children. She was actually Piaget's mistress during this whole time. So he had his wife doing the observations of the infants, and he had his mistress doing the observations of the older children. And I know it's a little bit of a trade-off. The mistress was the mistress, but at least she got to have her name on the books, which the wife didn't. This went on, by the way, for 40 years in the way of the old European traditions. Anyway, so Piaget has these two sides, or the Piagets, or the Piaget ménage à trois, has these two sides, one of which is the empirical side, the observations of the children, and the other of which is the theoretical side. Now, part of the Piaget theory was the idea that there were these big domain general stages of development, that if you look at children at different points of development, their cognition would have a lot in common. And in particular, he identified these 4 different stages of development, places where you see a big kind of a big nonlinear change, a big change, discontinuity between what children are like before and what children are like afterwards. And again, with Piaget, he's right. These periods, 18 months, 5, adolescence, really do seem to be sort of watersheds in development where you see a tremendous amount of change. Piaget thought the first period was infancy up to about 18 months. Then there was a period from 18 months to 5 when children sort of get to be going to school. Then there was the period you might think of as the school-age period. And then there was the period of adulthood. And he felt that in each of these periods, the baby's representations of the world, the baby's knowledge, were different in characteristic ways. So, for instance, he thought that in the sensory motor period, in infancy, which is his first period, essentially all babies had were sense impressions, their immediate sensory experience, and motor plans, ways of actually acting and going out and doing things on the world. So he thought that if you had a kind of psychological microscope and you could look inside the baby's head, what you'd see are a bunch of things like large rig thing or large looming round thing. And you'd also see things like, go get some milk, or wave your hand around. So he thought that what was in there were these action plans on the one hand and sensory experiences on the other hand. And he thought that what happened in infancy was that babies were putting together these sensory experiences and these action plans to develop more and more complicated and abstract kinds of structures. So baby might start out just having, okay, this is sucking, and this is a big white round thing that you suck on. But as the baby would say suck on a breast, he would realize, oh, wait a minute, sometimes the breast turns this way, and sometimes it turns that way. And if I move my head over this way, I can get closer to the nipple. If I move my head that way, I get further away from the nipple. And just the act of coordinating. And then you might see, oh, well, wait a minute, here's this other thing. It doesn't look like a breast. It looks like the top of a bottle, but I can suck on that too. So maybe those two things are the same. Yeah. Importantly, it wasn't a language at all. Not only was it not a language, but it wasn't even anything that we would think of as an abstract set of representations. So we thought that literally what was in their heads were these pictures and sense and sounds and so forth, and then these action plans. That was it. No ideas about things like objects or relationships or even things like distance. Anything that was more abstract, he didn't think was there at all in infancy. And that's one of the places where our picture of infants has totally changed from Piaget's picture. Is that clear to everybody? And please do ask questions about this as we go along. in reply to your question, he thought that at 18 months, when babies started to use language, there was this big shift. So now babies weren't just restricted to their immediate sense impressions and their immediate actions. Now they actually started to have some more abstract representations of the world around them because they started to be able to do things like use language and symbols. So now he thought, well, now actually there were things that looked more like propositions or sentences or language in babies' heads. But he still thought that those representations were very, very limited compared to the representations that children had later on. So for example, he thought that children at this stage were pre-causal. They didn't have any causal, they didn't understand causal relationships between things. He thought that they were egocentric. They couldn't take the perspective of another person. He thought that they were restricted to their immediate perception of the world. And he thought that they were illogical. He thought that they just kind of randomly associated things without any kind of rhyme or reason. So even though babies at this point had representations, they still were defective in all these ways from the perspective of an adult. And once again, it's important to say that Piaget actually went out and he had a reason for doing this. He went out and he interviewed 3- and 4-year-olds. And as a result of the interviews, when you interview a 3- or 4-year-old, you get stuff out that sounds like it's really weird. It's egocentric and illogical and pre-causal and so forth. Let me give you an example of this. My own son, when he was about 3, my oldest son, Alexei, was trying one day to figure out where babies come from. And you know, the mommy part is relatively easy to figure out, but the daddy part is kind of harder to figure out. So we are good Berkeley parents. We had a long discussion about the daddy and what the daddy does. The daddy uses his penis to make the baby, and he was thinking hard about this. And finally, he's sitting in the corner talking to himself about it in the way that 3-year-olds do. And what he did is he pulled down his trousers, and he took out his penis and looked at it very hard, and moved it around. And then he looked up very brightly and said, "A penis, a pencil, a pencil, a penis." And he said, "The daddy uses his penis to draw the baby." So it was like this picture. The daddy says, "Okay, 7.5 pounds, 32 inches," does this little blueprint, hands it to the mom, and says, "Okay, here's the specs for this baby." Now, that's a cute story, but it emphasizes, if Piaget had been hearing that story, what he would have said is, see, here's exactly what I'm talking about. He's putting together two things just because they sound the same, penis and pencil, and they have the same shape, even though they don't really belong together. The fact that things sound together, similar, or have the same shape, makes them think that they're the same, even though they aren't. He's sort of illogically not really understanding what the causal mechanisms could be. They're really different if you're drawing, if you're making a baby, and so on and so forth. So there's an example, and you could basically, as I say, just talk to any 3-year-old for 5 minutes, and you'll hear things that are as weird and strange and interesting as that story that I just told you. By the way, this is the father of my grandson, so he did actually figure it out in the right way in the end. Okay. Then Piaget thought that the last period, the concrete operational period, children started to understand things in a way that was much closer to the adult understanding, although there was still a lot of things that had to develop in that concrete operational period before children had the full understanding that an adult did. All right, what are some of the problems with Piaget? Well, again, one of the interesting things about Piaget is if you go out and you do what Piaget did, or what the Piagets did, you'll almost always get the right answer. You'll see the same kinds of things that they saw. But our new methods in cognitive development has meant that we can also see a lot of things that they didn't see. And we can test things in a lot of ways that they couldn't test. And we'll talk about some of the details about that later on. And basically what we've discovered as a result of that is, first of all, rather than there being these big stages where everything is the same, development's much more variable. So children could say have a very sophisticated understanding of causality in one sphere, but not in another. So for example, it turns out that Alexei, my son, at that same age, if you asked him about how his tricycle works, would have been able to give you a really good, sensible account. You push on the pedals, and the pedals turn the wheels, and then the wheels turn the crank, and then that's what actually makes the bicycle go. So he had a really good causal understanding of some things. It's just that things like where babies come from, he didn't understand, and that was where you got what looked like a Piagetian pre-operational understanding. So a basic point is that we don't necessarily see these big across-the-board changes. Instead, we see different kinds of development depending on what it is that you're finding out about. Another thing is that quite characteristically, and again, we'll see this over and over again when we're actually looking at the experiments, quite characteristically, when you test babies and children with other methods than the ones that Piaget used, they seem to be much more confident. So it turns out that if you do the kind of experiments we do in my lab, even 16-month-olds understand the relationships between cause and effect, and so on and so forth. If you look at what babies are looking at, even infants understand something about the perspective of other people, and so on and so forth. So very generally, when we use other methods, we see more confidence than we would have thought otherwise. Although that raises an interesting question about why is it that we're not seeing that confidence when we do the sort of things that Piaget did, and we'll talk about that more later on. And finally, a problem was that although he had this big picture about constructivism, he didn't say anything very specific about how constructivism took place, what were actually in detail the learning methods that babies and young children were using. So now what I'm going to do is talk about the post-Piagetian theories of cognitive development. And as an example, to try to explain this, I'm going to go back to an example that I talked about at the very beginning of the class, which is that funny story about Andreas pushing the reset button on my computer, even though he wasn't supposed to, and thereby causing a Loma Prieta earthquake. So there's an example of a weird thing that children characteristically do. They do things like push the button that you told them really, really clearly they weren't supposed to push when they're about 18 months old. And I'm going to use that as an example to try to show how different theories would explain that same example, to make it a little more concrete. Okay, so what are the theories of cognitive development? Okay, here's where the big flag that I'm organizing this differently from the book comes in. The book kind of squishes together two different accounts. Sorry, let me do this in also. That's the order that the book uses, but I'm going to actually switch around that order as well. So the book actually squishes together two very different accounts under the general heading of foreknowledge. One is, the first one that we'll talk about is the inheritor to the Plato and Aristotle idea. That's the idea that there's a great deal of knowledge there to begin with. Sometimes it's described in terms of modules, things that are there from the very start. And most of what we know about the world just comes from filling in the details of this very sophisticated knowledge that's there to begin with, and importantly, stays the same throughout your life. So the idea is that important things in life you get from genetics and evolution, they're there to begin with, and they don't change very much. All that happens is that you fill in the details. That's one version of core knowledge. So that's the real inheritor of the nativist project in the past. To skip around a little bit, the alternative, the empiricist tradition, the inheritor to Aristotle, says that what you have these abstract patterns, but they come as a result of very specific, they come as a result of all these specific experiences you've had. And again, the flag of the difference between me and the book is, for some reason, which probably has to do with people who are writing the book, they just point to one example of this kind of empiricist approach, the dynamic systems approach. But that's actually just one example, and not even a particularly dominant or important one in my view, of this kind of approach. So there's many other kinds of associationist or connectionist or other kinds of empiricist stories about how you could go from very specific pieces of information, put them together to get a more complicated kind of structure or representation. So the dynamic system one is one, and it's kind of way out on the spectrum, but there are others that, at least in my view, are sort of more respectable, that make the same point about how empiricism can go together.